My task is, of course, following lunch. It's going to be a little bit tough to, hopefully I can hold your attention. But this is a study that I've really valued, just going through the book of Ecclesiastes. Aaron has really done a great job of laying the foundation for us. He's gone through a lot of the technical things, laying the framework. So my lesson this afternoon, he's really done me a lot of favors. I don't have to get into all the details of some of the technical things, and it's a really practical lesson. He said that for his sermon this morning, but it's just a very practical, down-to-earth sermon that I think is going to be hopefully very applicable and hopefully beneficial to you. So I've entitled the lesson Solomon's Quest for Meaning. In the handout that Aaron gave, I won't have any direct references to it, but in that he referenced that essentially this is like a quest that Solomon has gone on. He's been in search of this meaning, the sense of meaning in life, and this way to really gain contentment and satisfaction in this life. And so he even points out in the handout that it's basically like Solomon's going to college, and he's going to try to find answers to all these big questions of life. And so what we'll do is we'll read these first 11 verses of Ecclesiastes 2 to help set the stage for our message this afternoon. So here we see Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. I said in my heart, "Come now, I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. But surely this also was vanity. I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives. I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards. I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the special treasures of the kings and of the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. Now, as we read this seems, Aaron alluded to this as well, but this seems a little bit of a depressing passage if you read it just on the surface. What really is he aiming at? It seems like he's really come up short, and really we're left without any hope whatsoever. It's been mentioned already that Ecclesiastes essentially seems like a very depressing book. And if you look at it from a certain point of view, it really can be. But here we see again that this is Solomon's quest to try to find meaning. He does his best to try to gain insight into why we're really here and what is this whole experience of life all about. I want to start with a question for us all. What's your current view of life? What's the way in which you look at life? How do you view your life, but also life in general? Maybe there are some, hopefully none in this audience, but there are some who have this opinion the same as Ernest Hemingway, who once said, "Life is a dirty trick, a short journey from nothingness to nothingness." And sadly, there's many in the world that have this opinion. This is the way that they view life. We're just all here for a short time. It really doesn't mean anything, and it won't mean anything after we're gone. And I love what Alistair Begg says about this. He says, people often wonder, is there life after death? But Solomon seemingly asks, is there life before death? Is there life in the life which is to come? But more importantly, for where we're at currently in life, is there life now that can be gained? Are there things that we can look at now to really gain insight into life and to gain enjoyment? And so really, in essence, the main technicality that I'll get into, and this is really a carry-on from Aaron and what we'll try to do throughout these sermons, is really to give you the perspective of Solomon as he's writing this. Where we're at currently in the book of Ecclesiastes, is he talking from the perspective of under the sun or above the sun? Is he having a worldly perspective, or is he having a spiritual perspective? Is he looking at things the way the world looks at it, or is he looking at things from the perspective of God? And I think what we can all clearly draw here from chapter 2 is that he's looking at it from the perspective of under the sun. He's got strictly a worldly perspective. He's looking at it from man's point of view. And if you do that, then essentially all these things come up short. They can't bring about any happiness. And he's also, along with his perspective, he's pursuing these things with the hope of gain. Now, some of these things that we'll look at this afternoon are not wrong in and of themselves, but if you pursue them for those to be the absolute end or the absolute outcome, then you're going to see that you're definitely going to be disappointed. So if you try to pursue these things for the hope of gain, that's something that they can never achieve. And so there's a number of analogies we could use with Solomon as he's pursuing these things. You could look at it from the standpoint of someone in a laboratory performing experiments, trying to go through trial after trial of experiments and finally get to the end of it and figure out the solution. But I also like the analogy of a maze. It's essentially like Solomon's been dropped here at the beginning of a maze. He's already kind of started along this maze with what Aaron had mentioned a couple of sermons ago about wisdom. He tried to seek after wisdom to see if that was the answer to life. But essentially it's as if this entire experience, this human experience, is a maze, one giant maze, and Solomon is starting out along each corridor of this maze trying to figure out what the solution is and ultimately trying to find some daylight at the end of it. I had the blessing of getting to go with my family to the zoo this past week, and we got to one part of the huge playground. If you haven't been to the Nashville Zoo, it's an incredible place what they've built, especially over the past few years. But they built this big playground, and somehow I can fit through all of the, at least the portion that we went through. But we got to one area, and I was basically just chasing the kids, trying to keep up with them. And we got to one part of the playground, and we were headed up this wooden structure, and there was a long line to wait to get up to the top of this structure, and I didn't even know what was going to be at the top. And essentially it's a dead end, and the only way down is a slide that's enclosed. And you can imagine with two young kids, Arlie being 6, Emerson being 3, we get to the top of this, we've got a long line. Emerson's not wanting to go by himself, so I've got him in my lap. And then Arlie is just standing over to the side, just scared to death. She just doesn't want to have anything to do with this, and we've got all these people waiting for us. And I said, we got to go. And finally I was able to coax her into all of us getting into this slide. And you can imagine the three of us, as we're going down this enclosed slide, you're just hoping for daylight. You're hoping eventually this thing will end because it starts to get really claustrophobic. And so finally we get to the end of it, and they didn't ask to get on any more slides after that. But essentially, Solomon is stuck in this maze, this enclosed maze. I'm using this figuratively, obviously. And he's trying to find daylight. He's trying to get to the end of this maze. He's trying to find the solution. What's the meaning of life? And so he goes through various portions of this maze, so to speak. And he starts out, as I mentioned, with wisdom. But then in chapter 2, he turns to pleasure. Wisdom has come up short. He says education, that's what the world really focuses on. And of course, education is important. But he mentions education comes up short. If you think that's going to solve all your problems and going to bring all the answers, you're going to be disappointed. So he starts out saying, well, in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 1, he says, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. We see here the passage mentions mirth. If you look at other translations, it'll mention pleasure. But here, we also see in Ecclesiastes 2, verse 10, he says, I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. And the word mirth there that we see comes from a Hebrew word which means joy, gladness, and pleasure. And so it's not necessarily pleasures that we might think of in a sinful sense. It's pretty much joy, pleasure, things that we find great happiness in this life. So he basically excels at all of this. He says maybe pleasure is the answer. Maybe that's what we're here for, to live and really enjoy it and then die. That's essentially all we've got to look forward to. But of course, what he finds, and this portion of the sermon it'll be a little bit brief, but he covers a lot of the pleasures that he experiences through life throughout the rest of these verses. But what he finds is these pleasures are very transient, they're very passing, they're fleeting, and essentially they come to nothing. And I love this quote from, it's a section of a poem from the poet Robert Burns. He says, pleasures are like poppies spread. You seize the flower, its bloom is shed. Or like the snow falls in the river, a moment white, then gone forever. I think that's a pretty great description of what's going on and what Solomon is experiencing. Essentially, you've got snow that's landing on the river, and as soon as it lands on the river, it's gone forever. You've got this beautiful moment in time that eventually fades out, and that's essentially what the pleasures of this life all come to. There's a few different characteristics we could look at and a few of the perils of pleasure. Worldly pleasures, as we mentioned, they're fleeting. They fail to satisfy, and we can see that. One example, 1 Samuel 12 and 21, this is Samuel talking to the people. He says, "And do not turn aside, for then you would go after empty things which cannot profit or deliver, for they are nothing." And so we see that all these things fail to really satisfy and fail to really provide substance to our lives. Another few characteristics, they often require money. And often a lot of money, just to do even simple things in life. A few simple pleasures, things to enjoy, it often requires a good bit of money. And it demands our time and attention. Sometimes when we seek to gain different possessions, different things, that requires our time. It requires us devoting some attention to those things and pulls us away from maybe things that are more important. And if we're not careful, they can become more burdens than really blessings. The more one has, the more that one essentially has to keep up, and they can end up owning us instead of us owning them. And so all of the pleasures, all the possessions, all the things of this life, they're fleeting and fail to satisfy, and we can see they require a lot of our time and resources. And so pleasures come up short in Solomon's experiment. But when we think about if this were a maze and we think about Solomon heading down this corridor, this is a really crowded corridor of the maze. There's a lot of people in life that seek after pleasures, and that's essentially what they live for. They're living for Friday. They can't wait till Friday gets here, and then the weekend happens, and then eventually Monday rolls around, and then they're just trying to get through the next 5 days before they can get to the weekend again, and then have a little bit of pleasure on the weekend, pretty much waste the entire weekend doing whatever, probably going out to party or to drink, and essentially they get back to Monday and they've got to do the whole thing over again, and it's just a constant cycle. And all these pleasures fail to really satisfy, but we can see a lot of people devote their time and attention to living such a lifestyle. Solomon says all of that's folly, and it comes to nothing. Well, he also tests comedy and laughter. He says maybe it's just being joyful, spending time laughing, spending time just basically cutting up, being a good time Charlie. Maybe this is where we can find some satisfaction. And I love a story that Alistair Begg shares that's actually a story he's recounting from one of Billy Graham's books, but it's a story about a man who goes to a psychiatrist trying to basically lay it all out on the table and explain to him all the things that are bothering him, all the things that basically in this life, life's just not worth living. There are just numerous struggles that he's going through, and it just all seems like it's just all for naught. And really, as the hour session goes on, the psychiatrist really struggles to find anything to really help the man. He tries and just listens and offers some suggestions, and finally, as a last-ditch effort, he says to the man, there is a local comedian in town that a lot of people are going to, and they're really, just really having a good time. They're really just rolling in the aisles. This guy is really good. He's really entertaining, and maybe just a little bit of laughter would do you some good. And the man just kind of hangs his head, and the hour session is up, and he heads toward the door, and right before he leaves, he turns and tells the psychiatrist, "I am that comedian." And so, a little bit of a humorous story, but a little bit sad as well when you think about that individual, as he tried his best to bring joy and happiness and laughter to other people, but he himself was inwardly very, very disappointed, very discouraged in life. And we can look at various examples. I've got Robin Williams' name up here. When we think about a lot of the actors in Hollywood and people who we think have it all and have achieved fame and fortune, I think we would be hard pressed to find another sadder story than Robin Williams. Just incredible, funny actor. Played in a number of movies and had some success. But if you look not even too closely at his life, you see that he experienced a lot of individual turmoil, personal tragedies. He suffered with depression all his life. and ultimately, unfortunately, gave into taking his own life toward the end. And again, Hollywood is filled with a number of tragedies like that, and we could look at a number of those. But sometimes we seem to think, well, maybe if I could just reach that point, if I could just achieve what they have, or if I had that level of fame and fortune, if I had the wealth that they had, then I would be happy. And we see time and time again, there are numerous examples that can bring about really nothing. Even for some of the most successful comedians, laughter and comedy is not the answer. And that's the conclusion that Solomon draws. He said, I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? So we see that it comes up short for Solomon. Now, I do want to point out that laughter in and of itself is not bad. There are many blessings that come with laughter. Scripture makes that abundant to us. Proverbs 17:22 says, a merry heart does good, like medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. It's good to have a merry heart. It's good to be lighthearted and be able to cut up with your friends and really help elevate one another's spirits. Psalms 126:2 says, then our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue with singing. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. And what we'll see a little bit later in our study of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 4, there's a time for everything. There's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. There are times for laughter. There are times to seek after these things. But the point that Solomon's making is if you're seeking after laughter and comedy, thinking that that's where the ultimate answer is, and you're thinking that's the end and the ultimate goal, then he said, I'm here to tell you that is going to come up short. This one's interesting. He says he would test wine and folly. Ecclesiastes 2:3 says, I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their life. It's interesting, these two phrases in the same sentence, embracing folly, but guiding his heart with wisdom. It almost seems to kind of really contradict. He's basically trying to maintain his wisdom as he goes into indulging in wine and these intoxicating drinks and essentially just seeing if that's where the answer lies. I like what Ian Provan says. He treads one path with his body while taking another with his mind, hoping in his intoxicated state to experience the full depths of folly and to arrive at discernment. Now, if that seems ludicrous, as it sounds, it really is. To think of the fact that we can pursue this and really that's ultimately where we're going to find some answers in hopes of being in an intoxicated state and seeing if folly is where we finally arrive at a little bit of understanding. It doesn't really make sense, and essentially that comes up short for Solomon as well. So he's wandered through various corridors of this maze so far, and he's really not found the answer. Another place that he looks for is work. He says, all right, well, if pleasure and comedy and laughter and wine, if all these things come up short, maybe I just need to get busy about doing some things. Maybe I need to be industrious and really expand my empire, so to speak. And we see that he elaborates on those things in verses 4-6. I won't be reading those verses, but we can pretty much sum up those in a number of bullet points. He points out how he built a number of houses, a number of vineyards, gardens and orchards, and not just that, but he had to, then once he built all those, he had to make sure they had some good irrigation to help water all these things. And so he had the more that he added, the more that he had to maintain. But we see that he was very busy. And, I think all of these things, as we're looking at this passage really helps teach itself. It doesn't really need a whole lot of commentary. But one thing that I can't help but appreciate with Solomon's efforts here is he wasn't simply just dabbling. He wasn't just dabbling a little bit in this. He went full force into each of these endeavors to see if this is where the answers lied. He didn't think that just, maybe a day or two and maybe I would find an answer to it. He sought it with all his heart to see if this is where the answers lay. And, we can look at various examples of people in the secular world and, as we go about our day-to-day lives, I'm thankful to have had the ability to hear someone. It was just a small room of us at work, but there was one of the directors was able to come in and share a little bit about himself. He was new to the company, and he wanted to share a little bit about himself and kind of give some background. And part of that background, he shared a lot of the successes, the places that he worked, but and this was the part I was thankful for. He actually shared some of the struggles that he had and some of the mistakes that he had made. And he mentions, he went so far into work and climbing the corporate ladder that he ended up missing his daughter's entire high school years. He missed all 4 years of her high school. He was so busy with work, he didn't make it to the big events. He didn't make it to the dance recitals or the whatever events she was a part of, the sporting events. He missed all of that. And he shared this all with us very, very candidly. And he said, it's only been recently that their relationship, father and daughter relationship, had kind of gotten a little bit more to the rebuilding phase. But I'm so appreciative that I hate that he went through that was his personal experience, but I'm really glad that he shared that with the small group of us that were in there, because you really get a glimpse into the lives of others. And I don't really have the desire to climb the corporate ladder, to advance, and any desire that I ever would have been squashed in that one conversation. But when you think about the things that we pursue in this life and work and in industry and devoting ourselves to whatever we're building, what is it costing us ultimately? And we see just how much it costs a lot of individuals who do go down that pathway. And we see that this comes up short for Solomon as well. And we'll see his ultimate conclusion in verses 10 and 11. Well, what about possessions and wealth? We've looked at a number of things that he built, things that he maintained, but what about some of the things that he acquired throughout his life? He mentions that he acquired various servants. And of course, if you've got this many possessions and this many houses and this many vineyards, you're going to need a workforce to help keep up all these things. And so he had a number of servants that worked for him. He acquired herds and flocks, which he said were more than any who ever came before him in Jerusalem. And certainly there were many great men who came before him who had great possessions, but Solomon exceeded them all. He had silver and gold. We'll touch on that in a moment. But he acquired great wealth. He was the wealthiest man to ever live. It says he acquired singers and instruments as well. Pretty much anything the heart desired, he acquired. When we think about today, if we hear a song that we like, we can purchase it on iTunes. But if Solomon heard a song that he liked, he actually purchased the person singing it. He added them to his ensemble. And if they needed an instrument, well, he had probably 20 of them that they could choose from. And so he had singers and instruments. Whatever the delights were of the heart, he acquired it all. 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 1 and 2 gives us a glimpse into how he acquired some of this wealth. 1 Kings chapter 10, 1 and 2. Now when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very great retinue, with camels that bore spices, very much gold and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she spoke with him about all that was in her heart. And so we see here that Solomon, he possessed great wisdom. People came to him from far and wide. Even a far-off queen would come to him to seek his counsel and gain insight and hear of his wisdom. And we see that she brought a number of gifts to him: spices and gold, riches, precious stones. And so we see it, Solomon's just laying up so many things in his own treasury that he's acquiring from others. 1 Kings 11 and 3, we also see that he had a number of wives, and he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines. And these women came from all over the world. They were some were Pharaoh's daughters, some just came from various different nations. And we can see, if we continue on in that verse, we see that they eventually would lead his heart away to serve foreign gods. But this points out just how expansive Solomon's empire was. And then we also see in 2 Chronicles 9 and 13, the weight of gold that came to Solomon yearly was 666 talents of gold. Now, if what I researched is correct, this came to about 50,000 pounds of gold, which would be almost 25 tons. I can't even fathom that much gold, but that was his income yearly that he received. And so we see there's just gold in abundance for Solomon. Ecclesiastes 2 and 9 says, "So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. It seems like throughout all these experiments, throughout all these various corridors of this figurative maze that we've been talking about, Solomon still didn't lose himself. He didn't lose his wisdom. He maintained that as he went through all of these experiments, and we see that he arrives at the same conclusion each and every time. Luke 12:15 says, "Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses." If we think about another crowded corridor of this maze, this would be another one. A lot of people seeking after worldly riches. When I've only been to Las Vegas once, and that's enough for me. But there was a time that I went, and you're able to. We actually had a conference there at one of the casinos, and if you walk through this casino, it is probably one of the saddest sights that you'll ever see. You've got people set up at slot machines, various machines, and they're just wasting the day away. It'll be the middle of the day, and you've got people in there playing slot machines, hoping to just strike it rich. They're just really hoping that that'll be finally where they finally make it. And it is a tremendously terrible sight to see, all that they're devoting their time to. They're just wasting away. So Solomon concludes in verses 10 and 11. We're drawing our lesson to a close here, but he says, "Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun." So we can see just how much Solomon has gone to the extreme in each of these examples of thinking this is where I'm going to find fulfillment and joy. And we see what he finds throughout each and every one of these examples is he reaches nothing but a series of dead ends in this figurative maze. He's not found the answer. And we see that he's left just basically depressed with where he's arrived throughout all of these experiments. I love what David Gibson says in his book, Living Life Backward. He says, "And the preacher, after all his projects and possessions and pleasures have run their course, realizes he is left with only sandcastles on the beach." Essentially, that might as well be what he's built up. At the end of the day, that might as well be what Solomon had worked on, was sandcastles on the beach, because they ultimately came to nothing. He built up this great empire. He built houses, vineyards, orchards, had a number of servants to keep it all up. And essentially all he's left with is a few sandcastles that are deteriorating on the beach. Now, one of my favorite things to do with the kids at the beach is to dig some holes. I like digging holes, and it's, being able to give them a place to play. Past couple of years we've went to the beach. We really couldn't even get in the water. It was double red flag warning, so you couldn't even, hardly dip your toe in the water before somebody would come by and shoo you away from the water. And so pretty much we were left just basically making our own fun and digging some holes there. And it takes maybe you all have done that as well. Maybe I'm the only one, but it takes quite a bit of time to sit there and dig a hole for your kids. You're digging it. You feel like you're digging half the day, and you don't hardly make any progress. And then when you finally do, it starts to cave in a little bit on the side. So then you got to hurry up and dig more of that out. And then when you finally get it to where it's a good level, or you just absolutely get exhausted and you're ready to be done, then you dig a little bit of a trench to the water so that when the ocean's tide comes up a little bit, it'll eventually bring some of that water into the hole you've made. And they'll have about 10 minutes of fun in there. And then gradually more sand fills it in, the walls start caving in, and eventually, the next day you can hardly even tell there was a hole there. You did all that work, and then you have nothing to show for it. And essentially that's what Solomon is trying to tell us this morning, or this afternoon. He's saying that you can do all this work, you can put all your time and effort, and you can spend your entire life, 70, 80, 90 years, however long we live on this earth. You can live your whole life aiming for these things, and it's essentially like digging holes on the beach. It's all going to backfill in. No one will even know that you were here. And these are the things that we devote our lives to. And this is what Solomon devoted a portion of his life to, hoping that it would bring these answers. I love what C.S. Lewis says about this. If you're feeling a little bit depressed about this passage, just know there's hope on the horizon as we continue this study in Ecclesiastes. But C.S. Lewis says, if we find in our hearts a longing for things that are not attainable in this world, We ought not immediately to say this is a lousy world. We ought to consider the possibility that we were made for another world and that we were made for a life that is truly life. And that's what we're all aiming for. That's what Solomon was aiming for. And we'll see by the end of the book that he finally does come to that conclusion. But we see what he goes through and the implications for us as Christians and just in our modern lives. The implications should be pretty simple for us. If Solomon, in all of his wealth and in all of his great stature and power, if he, throughout all of these resources and experiments, could not find happiness in all of these things, what hope do you or I have where we don't even come close to even a fraction of what he had? How do we hope to attain the same end result if he came up short in all of his wealth and in all of his glory? And so I'll leave the lesson with you this afternoon as we see that Solomon is essentially still stuck in the maze, and we'll find out Aaron's got the next section of Ecclesiastes, and so we'll find what portion of the maze, so to speak, that he navigates to next. But we never want to close a service without extending the invitation. If there's one here who has never obeyed the gospel, we want to encourage you to do that at this time and become a child of God. But if you have, and you've committed some wrong of a public nature, maybe you've gotten caught up in the cares of this life that we've talked about this afternoon, and maybe you're stuck in a vicious cycle and you can't really break out, you can't see daylight. We want to help you with that this afternoon. If you've got something you want to make right, we're here to help you with that. Please come as we stand and sing.
If you want to see more sermons like the one you just watched, then click on the subscribe button below and you'll be alerted when a new video is uploaded. Also, check out our website at chapelgrovechurch.com. At the top of the page, you'll find a resources button where you can take a free online Bible study series. One series is Are You Saved? It's a completely video series conducted by myself, Aaron Batty. The other one is written. It's called the Truth Free series. Upon completion of either one, you'll get a copy of a free book in the mail, Muscle and a Shovel. Thanks for watching our channel. We'll see you next time.